when I talk about God, you can trust that. You can trust that. Spirituality in God. I grew up with Walt Disney. I know many of you here did too. So anybody that grew up with Walt Disney, do we have an imagination or what? I mean, I tell you, I've done things and been places that most people never dream of in my mind, right? You with me on this? And my favorite fortune cookie, if you're like me and like to read little fortune cookies. By the way, I have a recipe for fortune cookies. If anybody wants to make their own, I kid you not. But the best fortune cookie that I ever read said this: reality is for people who lack imagination. Reality is for people who lack imagination. Most of us settle for default reality. And the Christ faculty of imagination is the building block of our reality of choice. Of choice. So you can guess today what my 12 power is for the day. It's imagination. And the apostle is a little confusing because it's Bartholomew, but in the Bible he's also called Nathaniel. And whether it was a Greek Hebrew thing where they didn't know which language was the name, or whether it was his surname was one and the other was another name he had, or whether they were all just confused. The name of the apostle is Bartholomew or Nathaniel. I'll use them both today. And the place in the body is the pituitary gland. The color is aquamarine. And Charles Fillmore in meditation said that everything that is manifest, everything, was first a mental picture and was brought into expression by the forming power of imagination. Everything. Isn't that amazing? I think Carolyn Casey said it better though. She said, imagination lays the tracks for the reality train to follow. I like that one. Lays the track. What tracks are you laying? You know, what's constantly going on in your mind? You're laying your tracks for your own reality that you're about to create through your imagination. So are we doing it through our limiting fears? Or are we doing it from our awareness of union with God and our limited potential? The reality train is about to come. And whether you say Bartholomew or Nathaniel, he's the apostle that represents this, because it began in the Bible story where Jesus first met Nathaniel, and he knew him because he had seen him before he even met him. Jesus had the gift of sight. And in John 1, he said, when Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, he said about him, here's a real Israelite. There's nothing false in him. And Nathanael asked, well, how do you know me? They'd never met before. Jesus said, I saw you when you were under the fig tree before Philip called you. Teacher, answered Nathanael, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And Jesus said, you believe me just because I told you I saw you under a fig tree? You'll see much greater things than that. But Jesus had the gift of sight, and they never really tell you what Nathanael was doing under that fig tree. You could use your imagination on that. But the point is that we all have the gift, the power of sight, with our imagination to see what's not in front of us yet. And when we do that, we're laying the tracks for our future reality. Now, my favorite movie about imagination, such a good one. Have you all seen the old movie Don Juan with Johnny Depp and Marlon Brando? Talk about a dynamic duo. Johnny Depp and Marlon Brando. And Johnny Depp plays this character. He's in sort of a fantasy world. He really believes he's Don Juan. And he's in a psychiatric hospital, of course. And his doctor is Marlon Brando, who plays his psychiatrist. And he's trying to convince Johnny Depp that he has a problem. He's trying to convince him that he's not Don Juan. And so he says to him one day, look, what would you say if I told you that you were in a psychiatric hospital? Well, Don Juan has the perfect answer. He said, I'd say that person has a very limited and uncreative way of looking at things. Is that the best line you've ever heard in a movie? If that's all you see, then you've got a very limited and uncreative way of looking at things. And I can be that way. I can be as content with what is as can be. I always say I'm probably one of the most boring people in the world. But when I tap into my imagination, oh. Now in the movie, the best part about the movie was at the end, it's not Don Juan who's healed, but his psychiatrist who's finally healed. Because he begins to expand his own life from his drab existence through the use of his own imagination. I get chills just thinking of the ending of the movie. You've got to rent it if you have never seen it. Imagination can bring back that zest back into your life. I mean, the Course in Miracles reminds us we're all a little crazy, we're all a little insane, and we should all be in a psychiatric hospital, probably. A spiritual psychiatric hospital. That's kind of what church is, isn't it? A spiritual psychiatric hospital. But I need to be there as much as the rest of you, so I'm not a psychiatrist. Now, the power of imagination helps us. So, if you compare this to quantum physics, I mean, this is science. This is science now. And I know we've talked about this many times, and I love the quantum physics thing about the particle and the wave. That they had two tubes, and that the energy going through both tubes exactly the same, but one of them came out a particle and one of them came out a wave, because that's how they envisioned it, that's how they saw it. And scientists call this quantum weirdness. Quantum weirdness. That's a new vocabulary word that we should all be using, because there's a lot of quantum weirdness going on in the world right now. Metaphysicians would say life is consciousness. Whatever we've got in here is laying the tracks for what we see out there. Infinite number of possibilities, an infinite number, and the outcome is determined by how we see it. Wow, we don't have to settle for this default reality. Greg Braden, who's a great New Thought author, said man's chief delusion, talk about delusions, man's chief delusion is his conviction that there are causes other than his own state of consciousness. Don't we all want to blame something else for the way I am? I love to say, oh, it's my planets are not in alignment today. Or it's the weather. It's the humidity that's making me this way today. I love to blame other things. But it's all delusionary because it's all for my state of mind. So imagination, as you can see, can work for us or against us, depending on what we constantly hold in mind. Anybody here ever made a mountain out of a molehill? Anybody ever worry yourself sick? Yeah. Anybody imagine your fears into being? That which I feared has come upon me. Our world has gone wildly crazy, full of paranoid imaginings right now. I'll give you an example of imagination gone wrong. Right now, there are people that think there's only two ways to stay safe in the world. Now, here, listen to this. To stay safe in the world, first of all, you need to avoid riding in automobiles because they're responsible for 20% of all fatal accidents. Did you know that? Don't stay at home because 17% of all accidents occur in your home. Avoid walking on streets and sidewalks because 14% of all accidents occur to pedestrians. We're narrowing it down here, aren't we? Avoid traveling by air, rail, or water because 16% of all accidents involve these forms of transportation. Now, of the remaining 33% of all deaths occur in hospitals, so above all else, avoid hospitals. We in Green Valley know that to be true. But there's good news. Here's the good news. You'll be pleased to learn that only 0.001%, I repeat, 0.001% of all deaths occur during worship services in church. And those are usually related to previous conditions. Therefore, logic tells us the safest place for you to be at any moment is right here in church. So please attend church. It could save your life. And I guess Jesus really does save. All right? So you can boo on that one. So you can see the use of our imagination can take us into crazy realities, or take us to that highest state of the kingdom of God, which Jesus said, it's right here, people. We just don't see it. We just don't see it because of our crazy imaginings, and I'm right there with the rest of you. Now, the gift of imagination, they started talking about that way in the Old Testament, only it was disguised. You had to interpret it metaphysically. Anybody ever hear of Joseph and his coat of many colors?
Oh, of course.
That was imagination that they were trying to talk about. One of the tribes, one of the sons, which ends up being one of the 12 powers of the Christ, is imagination. And in Genesis 30 is your very first treasure map. Now, anybody here, if you've been in Unity for more than a few years, you've probably done a treasure map, which is making a poster and putting pictures on it or words on it of that which you want to bring into your reality, using your imagination on a visual board. And the more you look at it, the more you draw it into your life. The first treasure map was in the Old Testament. And here it is. Remember the story of Jacob, who wanted to marry Rachel. He was so in love with Rachel. But she had a horrible father who said, all right, I'll let you have her, but you've got to work for me for 7 years. That was fine with Jacob. Sure, I'll work for you for 7 years. So their wedding day comes. Here comes the bride. But she has a veil over her face. After the wedding, the veil is lifted, and Jacob has substituted Rachel's sister Leah as his wife. Nothing he can do about it now. They're married. Back then, you could have more than one wife. So Jacob, the father-in-law, said, "But I'll give you Rachel. I'll give you Rachel if you work another 7 years." Was he a father-in-law or what? Yeah, let's all boo his. Jacob worked hard. And he built a big herd for Laban. But he wanted his own herd. So he said to his father, well, look, I want to build my own herd. Can I have some of these sheep? Because I'm the one that's been building up your herd here. Well, Laban said, okay, I'll let you build a herd. But you can only have the streaked, the spotted, or the speckled lambs. You can have those, I'll keep the rest. And then he took out of the herd, he culled the herd of all the streaked, spotted, or speckled lambs so that he wouldn't reduce the odds of him having any more of those. But Jacob finally outsmarted his father-in-law. He knew the power of imagination. First treasure map ever. This is true. You can look in the Bible, Genesis 30, if you don't believe me. He took some bark, like a birch tree that's spotted and speckled and streaked. And he put the bark by the water trough where the sheep came to breed. So while the sheep were breeding, they're looking at all this spotted and speckled and streaked design. So all the lambs came out spotted, speckled, and streaked. I kid you not, I'm just explaining them. I don't write. The first treasure map. That which we imagine, that which we're constantly focused on, can come into our life. And we're making vision boards every day, whether we do an actual vision board or whether we're obsessing over and over again. You can do it with photographs, you can do it with obsessive thoughts. And when you brother with the other apostles, when you brother with the other powers like faith, love, and wisdom, you can manifest in your life whatever your heart's desire is, if it's in alignment with divine will for your highest good. Now, the New Thought writer Neville wrote some great books about the feeling nature. In Unity, we talk a lot about our thoughts, our prayers, and our thoughts are creating. But that's the masculine side. Your mind, the thoughts are the masculine. The feminine is your feeling nature. And while the masculine thoughts can form what we choose to manifest, the feeling nature is the power behind the punch. The feeling nature gives power to your thought. So Neville says you can't just think it. You have to enter into the image of your heart's desire. Think it, feel it, smell it, taste it, imagine it. That's what imagination does. It puts all that feeling into it, as if it's already there. And then it'll come out a particle or a wave, however you've seen it. In Unity, our prayer practitioners use the power of imagination. We want to see you whole, well, and perfect. That's why we don't want to hear your whole story. If you come for prayer, the more you tell me of your awful story, of somebody that done you wrong or how bad you're feeling, the more when I pray I'm going to be thinking all those awful things. But if you just call and say, Ann Marie, I need prayers for healing, for strength, for perfect health, for prosperity, for abundance, then when I pray for you, all I'm imagining for you is strength, wholeness, health, vitality, prosperity, abundance, wisdom, guidance, to lay the tracks for your reality train to follow. That's prayer. That's prayer. We don't say, oh, please, God, take away this awful condition. No. We say the power of God is in you. And now this is coming forth in your life. Power of prayer with imagination. Powerful, powerful. When you were a child, did you ever get accused of daydreaming? Oh, you're just a daydreamer. They didn't know it, but we were creating our future through our daydreams. All I could daydream about was Roy Rogers and going out west. And here I am out west. I'm not with Roy, but I'm with somebody better. I imagined myself being a mother and having children. I never imagined being a minister, but that's a whole other story. Sometimes God has other imaginings that we can't even begin to imagine. The poet William Blake said, there's a very fine line between imagination and reality. Man is all imagination. Isn't that all imagination? All that you behold, though it appears without, is within you. In your imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. Like Amber's saying, I want to be in the dream. We're just dreaming this, folks, through our imagination. How do you want to see the world right now? Do you want to see it as we perceive it right now with fear-based separation thinking? Or do we want to see it united with God, united with each other, people in harmony, people caring for each other? A world of love, a world of peace, a world of abundance for all. That's what we want to imagine. Has it come to prayer? I think it's come to prayer. As we close our eyes and imagine that world, let's not just see the world that way. Let's feel it. What would it feel like if everyone knew their oneness? What would it feel like if they know we are the presence of divine love to each other? What would it taste like, smell like, sound like, look like? We imagine it and we call it forth through our prayer. We affirm the truth of it and we lay the tracks for that reality to follow. With gratitude, we say, thank you, Father, Mother, God. It is now manifest on earth as it is in heaven, in the realm of divine ideas. And so it is, so it truly is. Amen.
Please join us in singing I'd Like to Teach